In January 2024, in northern Chile, a vast and barren desert became the site of a disturbing discovery. Human remains were found buried beneath the sand near the city of Calama, an isolated area where the harsh climate can preserve bodies for a long time. Their thorough examination indicated that the remains had been intentionally hidden. The rocky terrain made digging challenging. Authorities later confirmed that the remains belonged to a woman. Preliminary forensic analysis shows she died from a gunshot wound to the head. Remains identified as those of Javiera Jiménez, who went missing in 2022. Javiera Jiménez grew up in Chile. As the eldest daughter, she developed a strong sense of responsibility early on. Her parents worked diligently to create a comfortable life for their children and instilled values of determination and independence in them. Javiera learned quickly that to succeed, she would need to rely on her own hard work. From a young age, she was known for her energetic and goal-oriented personality. In school, she excelled in academics, especially in math and science. However, her greatest passion was working with people. She had a natural talent for connecting with others. She was always eager to help and foster relationships. As a teenager, Javiera aspired to become a dentist. After finishing high school, she enrolled in college to study dental care, dreaming of becoming a skilled professional and eventually opening her own practice. Determined to advance her career, she balanced her studies with a part-time job as a hostess at a bar, where she welcomed customers and helped create a friendly atmosphere. This job not only provided her with income but also helped her enhance her communication skills. In addition to her studies and work, Javiera was actively building her presence on social media. She began by sharing small posts about her daily life, which garnered a larger audience over time. She collaborated with local brands to promote clothing, cosmetics, and other products. Her charm and engaging personality quickly made her blog popular. Javiera didn't focus only on work and academics. She prioritized personal development, was determined to achieve financial independence. At 18, she moved out of her family home, managed all her living expenses on her own. Her family was proud of her early independence and her ability to overcome challenges. Despite her busy schedule, Javiera always made time for her family, staying close to her mother and brothers, visiting them regularly, and sharing her future aspirations. A stagnant life was never an option for her. She was constantly striving to progress. Before she vanished, she had ambitious plans. She was getting ready to move into a new home, aiming to advance her social media career and continuing her studies. Javiera met Andres Sutter in 2022 through a group of mutual friends she frequently hung out with. Initially, there were no red flags with Andres. He was charming, self-assured, and good at building relationships. He made a strong first impression, appearing considerate, engaged, and truly interested in her life. Soon after, their talks evolved into a romantic relationship. In the beginning, everything felt ideal. He was supportive, encouraged her goals, and admired her independence. However, as time passed, red flags began to appear. Javiera noticed that Andres was excessively jealous. He was uncomfortable with her job at the bar, monitored her interactions, and frequently asked where she was, who she was with. His behavior became increasingly intrusive. He would show up unexpectedly, even when she had told him she was busy. He went through her phone, questioning every new contact. His jealousy became unreasonable. He particularly disliked it when Javiera spent time with friends, especially if men were present. Soon, other troubling issues emerged. Andres was often unclear about his own activities. He didn't have a steady job but always seemed to have money. When she inquired about his work, he avoided giving direct answers. Over time, Javiera discovered that Andres's name was associated with certain groups involved in illegal activities. Among a small circle of friends, rumors circulated that he might be involved in criminal activities, including theft and the illegal trade of copper. The turning point in Javiera and Andres's relationship occurred when Javiera discovered that Andres was living a double life. She wanted nothing to do with illegal activities and didn't want to be involved with someone who could put her in harm's way. Eventually, she decided to end their relationship, stating that she couldn't see a future with him. However, Andres refused to accept her decision. He continued to pursue her, calling her frequently, showing up uninvited, and trying to persuade her to return to him. He dismissed her rejection, believing that she would eventually change her mind. As Javiera started to avoid him, Andres became even more persistent, threatening her by claiming he knew everything about her and wouldn't allow her to leave. Javiera had no idea that their breakup would have serious consequences. On August 26, 2022, Javiera's day began like any other. She and her mother, Gladys Galagillos, went to a shopping mall, had lunch, and discussed the changes coming in Javiera's life. Javiera is moving out. She was excited about this new chapter. During their conversation, Javiera expressed her ambitions for the future. She discussed her goals of advancing her career, increasing her income through social media, and completing her education. Her enthusiasm and drive were evident. Her mother felt happy seeing her daughter so excited. After their outing, they returned home, where Javiera assisted her mother with household chores, then folded the things into the suitcase. Later that evening, before leaving, Javiera mentioned to her mother that she intended to spend the night at a friend's house. This was not unusual, as she often stayed over with friends. Once she arrived, she and her mother continued to text each other, as they usually did. Everything seemed perfectly normal. However, as midnight approached, a text arrived that changed everything. Andres messaged her, "I found you, dog." This news was monumental for Javiera, as her dog, Lucky, had been missing for a few days, and she had been searching tirelessly. She had even posted on social media, offering a reward for Lucky's safe return, so she immediately reacted to Andres's message. Then she stopped texting her mom. A few hours later, all attempts to contact her by phone were unsuccessful. The next day, Javiera was expected to come home, but she never arrived. Her family started reaching out to her friends, but no one knew her whereabouts. Her sudden disappearance left her loved ones in distress. They had only two clues: their last conversation with her and a message that later became crucial in the investigation. Javiera's disappearance caused deep concern for her family and friends. However, the one person who seemed unconcerned was Andres. When her mother finally managed to reach him, he responded in a detached manner, showing no signs of worry. When Gladys inquired about her daughter's location, he calmly stated he had no idea and then proceeded to share his version of events. That night, he met with Javiera to help her search for her missing dog. They drove to several places but couldn't find it. To distract her, he suggested going to Calama, his hometown. Javiera agreed. She had a suitcase with her because she was moving the next day, so it seemed she might have intended to stay at his place overnight. However, his account became less clear from there. He claimed they had an argument during the trip. Suddenly, Javiera realized that her suitcase was missing. She thought it might have fallen out of the trunk. Distressed, she insisted they go back to look for it. According to Andres' testimony, he left Javiera at the entrance to the city of Calama while he returned to retrieve a suitcase that fell out of the truck they were both traveling in. This version of events was confusing. Javiera was supposedly left alone on a highway at night, far from the city, without a way to get home or call for help. However, Andres made no effort to persuade her to return to the car, nor did he check if she was safe. Gladys immediately sensed something was wrong with his account. When she pressed him for details, Andres began to contradict himself. At first, he said he had dropped her off near Calama, then he changed it to somewhere on the way back to Antofagasta. He couldn't remember the exact spot, which raised further suspicion. When Gladys asked why he hadn't called her or any of Javiera's friends to inform them that he left her alone at night, Andres hesitated. He said he thought she was just upset and would find her way home. A few hours later, he altered his story again, claiming that he had been in a car accident after leaving Javiera. He said another car had collided with his from behind, and he went to the hospital for a checkup. This, he explained, was why he didn't go back to look for her. Late Saturday night, almost 24 hours after Javiera went missing, her mother received an unexpected and concerning message from an unknown number. It read, "Mom, it's me. I left. There was an accident." I need some time. Don't worry about me. I'll come back once everything is settled. Love you. Take care of Grandma and my brother. Gladys read the message repeatedly, sensing something was amiss. The tone felt distant and impersonal, which alarmed her, but the errors stood out even more. Javiera was always meticulous with her texts, avoiding shortcuts and spelling mistakes. This message, however, was filled with typos and awkward phrasing that didn't match her style. Gladys tried to call the number, but the call failed. The phone had already been turned off, increasing her anxiety. Worried, she showed the message to Javier's friends, and they all agreed Javier would never write something like this. They recognized her usual texting style and emotional expressions. The content of the message was also suspiciously vague. Where was she? What kind of accident had occurred? Why hadn't she provided more details? Why send a cryptic message from an unknown number instead of calling? Gladys took immediate action and reported the message to the police. They documented it as a potential attempt to mislead the investigation and distract from a possible crime. A task force was quickly assigned to the case. Investigators traced the message to its originating SIM card. The phone carrier confirmed it was linked to a false identity, a common method used when buying anonymous prepaid cards. Next, law enforcement tried to locate the phone. They hoped to find its general location, but it had been turned off shortly after the message was sent. The last known signal placed it near Calama, the same area where Andres claimed to have last seen Javiera. Further examination revealed that the phone had only been used once, suggesting the message was pre-planned and aimed at deceiving her family into believing she had left on her own terms. Experts analyzed the content of the message and found that it did not match Javiera's usual writing style. The errors and unusual phrases were clear indicators that it was not written by her. This finding became a crucial piece of evidence, suggesting that the message was fabricated and indicating that Javiera did not disappear voluntarily. As a result, investigators began treating the case as a potential crime, with Andres emerging as the primary suspect. However, the investigation progressed slowly due to a lack of concrete evidence. Concerned that each passing day without answers diminished their chances of uncovering the truth, Javiera's family and friends initiated their own investigation. They spoke with people familiar with Andres, examined his background, and searched for any links to criminal activity. Soon, they discovered evidence connecting him to illegal operations. Through shared contacts, they found individuals who claimed Andres had participated in stealing copper from trains and was allegedly part of a group that extracted and sold metals on the black market. Furthermore, accounts of his aggressive behavior emerged. Those who knew him described him as having a short temper and a tendency to get into conflicts, often involving physical fights, and an inability to tolerate being contradicted. These details increased the family's concerns. If Andres had a history of aggression, he was certainly capable of committing a serious crime, particularly in a moment of rage. Javier's friends recalled that she had confided in them about Andres becoming increasingly controlling and obsessive. They found old messages where she expressed worry that he was tracking her, calling her several times a day, and demanding to know her whereabouts. While her loved ones continued to search for answers, the police conducted a forensic examination of Andres's car. Since he was the last person known to see Javier alive, his truck could contain important evidence. Inside the truck, investigators discovered traces of blood. Initial analysis showed stains on the passenger seat and the interior of the door. They also found fibers that seemed to match the clothing Javier was wearing. The blood samples were sent for DNA testing. A few days later, the results confirmed the worst fears: the blood belonged to Javiera Jiménez. This revelation completely undermined Andres's claim that he had simply dropped her off on the highway. If she had left his truck voluntarily, why was her blood found inside? And if she had been injured, why didn't he report it? Police obtained GPS data from Andres' vehicle, which revealed that on the night Javier disappeared, he was driving towards Calama. However, instead of taking the main road, he opted for a side road that led into the desert. His car remained in that isolated area for a long time before it continued on its way. This discovery became a significant turning point in the case, leading investigators to suspect that a crime may have taken place there or that evidence was concealed. When Andrés learned that the police had received forensic results, he understood that his arrest was imminent. His behavior changed. He ceased communication with everyone, including those he previously trusted. The day before he was scheduled to be questioned by police, he suddenly packed a bag and left his apartment. Surveillance cameras recorded him exiting the building with a small backpack and getting into a car. Neighbors later confirmed that he left in a hurry and did not return. Authorities quickly issued an arrest warrant for him, but by that point, he was already gone. Further investigation showed that Andrés had used false documents to cross the border, making him a fugitive. His name was added to an international criminal database, but he managed to evade capture. For Javier's family, the only option was to continue seeking justice and waiting. They believed strongly that he would eventually slip up again. When he did, they were confident that the law would catch up with him. Law enforcement's initial efforts to catch Andrés were unsuccessful. They found his abandoned car on the outskirts of Antofagasta, but he was missing, indicating he had carefully planned his escape. Phone records revealed that, just hours before disappearing, he had contacted several people already under investigation for criminal activities, suggesting he used these connections to vanish. Eventually, investigators confirmed that Andrés had illegally fled Chile into Bolivia. He avoided official crossings by using lesser-known smuggling routes favored by traffickers. After crossing the border, he adopted a new identity. For months, he successfully evaded capture, fully aware that authorities were searching for him. Despite the challenges in the investigation, Javier's family refused to lose hope. Gladys tirelessly worked to keep the case in the public eye, ensuring that Andrés appeared on international wanted lists. The family engaged with the media, raised awareness on social networks, and distributed flyers with his photo, hoping that someone would recognize him and notify the authorities. The turning point in the investigation came when a reward was offered for information that would lead to Andrés's capture. The family pledged a generous sum to anyone who could provide credible information about his location. This approach proved effective, as tips began to emerge. By late 2023, reports indicated that Andrés had been seen in a Bolivian city, living a secluded life and avoiding attention while keeping limited contact with locals. Bolivian authorities started monitoring his movements. They learned, through informants, that he was using a false identity, taking odd jobs, and avoiding any official documents that might reveal who he really was. However, he could not remain hidden forever. In January 2024, a local resident reported his exact location to the police. Authorities responded quickly, initiating a targeted operation to capture him. They surrounded the building where Andrés was hiding. The operation was quick and efficient. He complied with their commands and was apprehended without resistance. During his arrest, he remained calm, seemingly resigned to his situation. This time, there was no way to escape. Andrés was officially in custody and would soon face justice in Chile. After confirming his arrest, Bolivian authorities began the process of extraditing Andrés back to Chile. Within days, he was returned to face trial, allowing Javier's family to see the person responsible for their daughter's death held accountable. However, this was just the start of a long battle for them, as they were determined to push for the harshest possible sentence. Once in Chile, Andrés was placed in a detention facility, marking a new phase in the investigation. With the main suspect in custody, authorities had a chance to uncover the answers they had sought for over a year and a half. Initially, he refused to cooperate, denying any involvement in Javier's disappearance. However, investigators were ready, armed with evidence linking him to the crime. As the pressure increased, he eventually admitted. His confession lacked any sign of remorse or justification, delivered as if stating a simple fact. He neither portrayed himself as a victim nor showed any regret, maintaining a disturbingly calm demeanor as he spoke. The information he provided directly contradicted his earlier statements. He confessed that he hadn't originally intended to harm Javier, but after she refused to reconcile and ended their relationship for good, he made a choice he never planned to take back. He tricked her by claiming he had found her lost dog. Trusting him and unaware of what was about to happen, she agreed to meet him. He stated that the crime occurred late at night on a deserted highway. He stopped under the false pretense of looking for a missed suitcase that he claimed had fallen from the trunk. When Javiera got out of the truck, he struck her with a fatal blow. Afterwards, he drove further into the desert, dug a shallow grave, and buried her body, thinking that the harsh environment would eliminate all evidence. The day after his confession, investigators began searching for the burial site using the coordinates given by Andres. In mid-January 2024, they found human remains in a shallow grave covered with sand. Now, forensic specialists begin the identification process. A few days later, forensic tests confirmed that the remains were indeed those of Javiera Jiménez. Although the search had ended, the fight for justice was just beginning. His family urged the court to impose the harshest sentence possible on Andres. After his confession, the case was brought to court. There was no doubt about his guilt. His own words, along with the evidence and the discovery of Javiera's body, made that clear. It was now the court's responsibility to decide his punishment. Javiera's family insists on the harshest penalty, life in prison without parole. They were convinced that he posed a threat to society. For Javiera's mother, true justice guaranteed Andres will never have the chance to re-offend. The prosecution presented all relevant evidence in court, with experts confirming that the crime was premeditated. They highlighted the misleading invitation, the choice to take her to a remote area, and the complete absence of any effort to help her, all of which indicated a well-planned act. Forensic specialists documented injuries that disproved any claims of accidental harm. Nevertheless, the defense sought a lighter sentence, arguing that their client had confessed, volunteered, and aided in locating the remains, which they claimed to have cooperated with the investigation. They requested leniency based on this argument, which angered Javiera's family. They believed it was clear that Andres's confession was not out of remorse. He only admitted the truth when he had no other choice. He felt no guilt and was merely trying to lessen his sentence. The trial lasted several weeks, during which Gladys participated every session, watching everything unfold. Although she remains composed, her determination was evident in her eyes. Furthermore, in a similar fashion to the disappearance of Javiera Jiménez in August 2022, Andres is also being investigated for being a member of a violent armed gang that steals copper while it is being transported on FCAB trains. Similar crimes were committed by other members of the gang, and the prosecution was able to establish Andres Sutter's involvement through photographs, text messages, and statements from other criminals. In both cases, the court set different investigation dates. For the murder, he was sentenced to 90 days, and for the armed robbery and the copper cathode theft, he was sentenced to 60 days. In addition, Andres remains in custody awaiting trial.
A girl set out from her home to visit a friend but never arrived. Initially, the police found no clues, and the case went cold. For years, it seemed that the answer was just out of reach, and no one could solve the mystery. Decades later, everything changed when the truth emerged in an unexpected way. Claire Tiltman was born on January 14, 1977 in the small British village of Greenhithe. As an only child, she attended an all-girls school where she made many friends. From a young age, Claire was focused and determined. She aspired to be one of the first female firefighters in the country. During high school, she volunteered at charity events organized by the local fire department, offering her assistance in any way possible. However, she was also committed to earning a college degree before pursuing her dream career. In January 1993, when Claire was 16 years old, she was busy with her final exams and considering her future education. On January 18th, just 4 days after her birthday, she went to a friend's house to discuss college options and potential applications. Claire left home around 6 p.m., informing her mom that she would return in about an hour and a half. However, when that time passed, Claire still had not come back. Initially, Claire's mom suspected that she had simply lost track of time and might have stayed longer at her friend's house. However, when it was past 8 p.m., her concern grew. She called Claire's friend's house, only to learn that Claire had never arrived. Believing that plans might have changed, she began calling some of Claire's other friends, but nobody had seen her that evening. A few minutes later, Claire's mom went outside and encountered a neighbor who informed her about an incident a few miles away. The area had ambulances and numerous police cars. Feeling anxious at the time, Claire's mom went directly to the local police station to report her daughter missing. She gave them a detailed description of Claire, but instead of taking her report, the officers asked her to return home. They mentioned that there had been an incident and that someone would come by shortly to explain the situation. A short time later, police arrived at her door with devastating news that no parent ever wants to hear. Her daughter had been found dead just hours earlier. That evening, two men were driving along a road connecting nearby towns when they noticed a girl kneeling by the roadside. Concerned, they stopped to check on her. As they got closer, they realized something was seriously wrong. She was struggling to breathe and appeared to be unresponsive. One man quickly ran to a nearby pub to call for help while the other stayed with her. Initially, he thought she might have been hit by a car since she was so close to the road. He tried to comfort her, but her condition deteriorated rapidly. Within minutes, she stopped breathing entirely, and when paramedics arrived, it was already too late. Her body was taken to the medical examiner, and the findings were shocking. She had been stabbed 9 times, likely with a large knife, but there were no signs of abuse. Meanwhile, the police started investigating the crime scene and quickly identified where the attack had occurred. Claire was probably ambushed in a narrow alleyway off the main road leading to her friend's house. The nature of her injuries suggested that the attacker approached her from behind. However, there was little else to help the investigation. The alley was quiet, dark, and deserted. There were no security cameras, witnesses, or helpful evidence. One crucial detail stood out. The medical examiner noted the murder weapon was unusually large, too big to be carried casually in a pocket. Detectives suspected that the killer had brought the knife from home, indicating a premeditated plan to use it. News of the murder quickly spread through Claire's village and neighboring towns. That evening, some students were still at school studying for exams when they heard the news on the radio. Initially, the victim's identity was unknown, but it wasn't long before rumors circulated. With no strong leads in the investigation, the police sought help from the public. A few people came forward claiming to have seen a man in a light-colored coat near the road around 7 p.m. Another witness reported seeing a man with dark, curly hair leaving an alleyway, but neither individual could be identified, despite the tight-knit nature of the community. Detectives suspected that the attacker might have had a personal connection to Claire, which could explain the motive. However, they also considered a more alarming possibility that this incident could be part of a pattern, indicating that they might be dealing with a serial offender. In December 1988, 4 years before Claire was murdered, a 27-year-old woman was attacked by an unknown assailant while walking home from work. He was armed with a gun and a knife, abducted her, and drove to a remote area where he attempted to assault her. After stabbing her 5 times, he left her, believing she was dead. Miraculously, she survived. Despite her severe injuries and the freezing temperatures, she crawled to a nearby road, where a group of workers found her. She spent 9 days in intensive care, and doctors successfully saved her life. However, the police were never able to identify or capture her attacker. After Claire was murdered, detectives and local residents started to suspect that the same individual might be responsible for both crimes. A few days later, Claire's funeral took place, drawing hundreds of people from the community. Prior to the funeral, her parents spoke to reporters and mentioned that they feared the killer might attend the service. The detectives shared this concern, so they were present at the funeral and carefully noted everyone who attended. However, this effort still did not lead them to the person responsible for her murder. In the weeks that followed, the police continued to question local residents and investigate leads, but they did not find any useful information. Over 2 years passed, and it began to feel like the case would remain unsolved. Gradually, as people stopped discussing what happened to Claire, until one day, everything changed. On October 17, 1995, a local woman was returning home from work when a man attacked her just a few hundred yards from where Claire had been stabbed. The attacker used a knife. When the woman fell and screamed, he fled the scene. Fortunately, She survived despite her injuries. However, detectives faced challenges since the attacker approached her from behind, so she couldn't describe his face or any specific features. Luckily, a witness stepped forward and reported seeing a white Ford Capri nearby. This information allowed investigators to quickly identify the car's owner, a local milkman named Colin. Police remembered that they had previously spoken to Colin right after Claire's murder. He had called them to report seeing a man with dark hair near the crime scene. However, when detectives met with him a few weeks later, his story had changed slightly. Initially, Colin said he was driving on that road around 6:30 p.m., but now he insisted it was closer to 5:30 p.m. Nevertheless, he had an alibi. His mother told the police that they had been driving together and were already home when Claire was attacked. Detectives had more reasons to be suspicious of Colin. He drove a white Ford Capri, which witnesses had also spotted near another attack. Colin was known for wearing a light-colored trench coat, matching the description given by several witnesses from both crime scenes. He also had light-colored hair, and two different people reported seeing a fair-haired man near the alley where Claire was murdered. These factors led detectives to seriously consider him as a suspect and to obtain a warrant to search his home. Police discovered a large knife in the house that matched the wounds of the latest victim. However, that was just the start of their findings. They also found a hidden journal, which contained shocking revelations. In the diary, Colin confessed to attacking a woman in 1988, referring to it as his masterpiece, and claiming it had a 95% success rate. When he learned that the victim had survived, he expressed a desire to do better next time. Additionally, he mentioned an attempt to sneak into a care home to kill someone, but stated that the plan failed. Colin Ash Smith shared some unsettling experiences from his past. He revealed that he admitted to threatening his first victim, warning her that if she reported him to the police, he would harm someone else. Additionally, Colin confessed to a stabbing incident in 1995. He was angry with his girlfriend, believing she was unfaithful. In his rage, he drove around looking for someone to hurt. Initially, he saw a man but thought that would be too risky. Later, he noticed a woman walking alone, stopped his car, and attacked her. Afterward, he felt a sense of relief and was indifferent about the woman's fate. The diary revealed his intentions to commit additional murders and mentioned that he had broken into the homes of several women he knew while they were away. When police examined Colin's car, they discovered blood-stained clothes and a torn piece of a tie, which he had used in an attempt to strangle his first victim. This evidence was sufficient to charge him with attacks on both women. Detectives also believed he was responsible for Claire's murder and began investigating for any possible connections. Colin's family was familiar with Claire's family. They both frequented the same community center, a social hub for residents. Remarkably, Claire had celebrated her birthday at that center just 4 days before her death, and Colin had been there the same night. Investigators also noted that Colin attended her funeral. However, despite these connections, there was no concrete evidence linking him to her murder. While Colin was in jail, detectives interrogated him, but he denied any involvement. He did present a theory, suggesting that the killer could be a man who used to play pool with Claire at the community center. Colin claimed that this man left town soon after the murder and that he last saw him at Claire's funeral. Police were able to locate the man, but he did not match any of the witness descriptions of someone seen near the crime scene. In contrast, Colin fit the descriptions perfectly, but the police still lacked sufficient evidence to charge him. Colin was ultimately charged only for the 2 attacks that occurred in 1988 and 1995. In December 1996, he pleaded guilty and received life sentences, with the chance of parole after 15 years. However, investigators continued their pursuit of justice for Claire, seeking any evidence that could strengthen their case against him. Among all the possible suspects, Colin remained the most likely, but there were significant challenges: a lack of physical evidence and his alibi. Colin called the police the day after the murder, claiming he saw a man with dark hair near the scene about an hour later. However, this call contradicted his own alibi because, according to his account, he would have had to be very close to the alley when Claire was attacked. This raised suspicions among detectives. Was his mother lying to protect him, Detectives continued their investigation and eventually revealed the truth. Colin's alibi was entirely fabricated. They found concrete evidence showing that his mother was not with him that evening, indicating that she had lied to protect him. In addition to this, investigators made another unsettling discovery. They learned that Colin's father had disposed of a knife that Colin had brought home after the 1995 attack. He confessed to boiling the knife, taking it apart, and throwing away the pieces just hours before police arrived with a search warrant. As a result, he was sentenced to 12 months in prison. Colin's mother was also involved. She later gave an interview to a local TV station where she claimed it was her idea for her husband to dispose of the knife. She insisted that she believed her son was innocent and was afraid that the police would wrongfully accuse him of someone else's crime. Despite their extensive investigation, police still lacked sufficient evidence to charge Colin with Claire's murder. While he served time for other attacks, detectives continued to explore his background in hopes of finding a connection to the crime, but they came up empty-handed. The only notable find occurred during a routine search of his prison cell, where officers discovered disturbing notes filled with graphic fantasies about women he knew. These notes resembled pages from his old diary and painted a troubling picture of his mindset. After that, the investigation stalled. Claire's parents believed Colin was the murderer, and it weighed heavily on them that the police couldn't charge him. Sadly, Claire's mother died of cancer in 2008, and her father passed away in 2012, so neither lived to see justice for their daughter. In 2013, the case gained public attention again as detectives renewed their efforts to identify the killer. They reached out to the public for any information, and even the Prime Minister supported their appeal. Although many tips came in, none were helpful until a former cellmate of Colin's, Stephen Dubois, stepped forward with new information. He claimed that Colin had bragged about attacking a girl one day. According to him, Colin recounted seeing her at a crosswalk and described how he suddenly lost control. Detectives quickly noticed an important detail. Claire had been using a crosswalk that led directly into the alley where she was attacked. In contrast, the other two victims had been found far from any crosswalks. This clue strongly indicated that Colin might have been referring to Claire or possibly another victim that the police had not yet identified. However, detectives were skeptical about the existence of other victims since there were no similar unsolved cases reported in the area. Detectives did not have enough evidence to prove guilt yet, but they decided it was time to present all their findings and attempt to take the case to trial. Meanwhile, a new law in the UK was enacted, allowing prosecutors to introduce a suspect's previous convictions in court. This could significantly impact Claire's case. Colin was already serving a sentence for 2 violent attacks that were strikingly similar to Claire's case and occurred only a short distance from where she was killed. Additionally, investigators had testimony from Stefan and solid evidence that Colin's alibi was fabricated. With this information, prosecutors felt they had enough to proceed. On February 12, 2014, detectives announced that Colin had officially been charged with Claire's murder. This was significant timing, as it coincided with his first scheduled parole hearing. Instead of being released, he remained in jail while prosecutors prepared for trial. During the proceedings, he revealed even more unsettling information. He disclosed that he began sneaking out of his house at night when he was about 19 or 20 years old, taking a knife with him and roaming the streets, looking for someone to kill. Colin expressed that for him, it was about feeling powerful and having control over others. As he didn't want to appear weak, his ex-girlfriend testified that Colin started behaving unusually right after Claire was murdered. Initially, she thought he was just as shaken as everyone else in town, but later realized there was more going on. When asked about his feelings toward women, Colin admitted he both loved and hated them. He acknowledged that he struggled with low self-esteem and often felt worthless, which made it difficult for him to trust anyone, especially women. He also mentioned that he owned a collection of 20 to 30 knives at home, along with a crossbow and several air rifles, and his parents were aware of his collection. Additionally, Colin confessed that he never left the house without carrying a knife. When Stefan was called to testify, the prosecution faced an unexpected problem. Stefan stated that he could not clearly remember what Colin had said to him, and acknowledged that he might have mixed up the conversation with someone else. The trial lasted 5 weeks, and on December 11, 2014, the jury found Colin guilty of murdering Claire Tiltman. He received a life sentence in prison, with the chance for parole after 21 years. When the verdict was announced, Colin showed no emotion. He later appealed the decision, but the court turned it down, stating that the evidence against him was overwhelming. After 26 long years, justice was finally served. Following his conviction, detectives branded Ash Smith absolutely evil and said he should never be released. Jaswant Narwal, chief prosecutor for CPS Southeast, called the case one of the most complex that CPS Southeast has dealt with in recent years. In November 2015, Ash Smith appealed against his conviction on the grounds that Judge Sweeney was wrong to allow seriously harmful material to be put before the jury. However, the appeal was dismissed by Judge Davis and 2 other judges of appeal. He is currently being held at HMP Durham. In honor of Claire, local officials first named a road after her, and later they renamed a street using her last name. In 2022, a new community center was opened, proudly named after Claire Tiltman. Claire Tiltman's tragic murder left an indelible mark on Greenhithe, but her legacy endures through the community's unwavering pursuit of justice and the tributes that honor her vibrant spirit. After 26 years, Colin Ash Smith's conviction brought closure to a case that once seemed unsolvable, underscoring the resilience of Kent police and the impact of new legal measures. While Claire's parents did not live to see this resolution, her memory lives on in the road, street, and community center named after her, inspiring future generations to embody her determination and kindness. The case stands as a testament to the power of perseverance, ensuring that Claire's light continues to shine brightly in the hearts of those who knew her and beyond.
Born on May 20th, 1998, in Louisville, Colorado, Ashley Doolittle discovered her love for horses at the age of 5. Growing up in a supportive family and following her dreams, she always aspired to be a role model in her community, like many other young girls. Ashley was raised by her parents, Anne Marie and Jeff Doolittle, along with her 2 brothers, Brandon and Michael. From an early age, her vibrant personality attracted people to her. By the time she was 5, she had her first pony, igniting a lifelong passion for horseback riding that became a key part of her identity. Her love for horses and the sense of community she found in this world gave her purpose. A few years later, at the age of 8, she began attending horse shows and immediately fell in love with the community atmosphere and rodeo lifestyle. She actively participated in rodeo events and achieved many accomplishments. In 2016, at around 18 years old, she was honored with the title of Lady-in-Waiting, a respected position in the rodeo community. This role involved assisting the rodeo queen and entailed various responsibilities, such as organizing fundraisers, supporting sponsors, attending community events, and representing the event as a spokesperson. Receiving this title was a great honor for Ashley, bringing her one step closer to her ultimate goal of becoming rodeo queen. Ashley became well known for her dedication to the rodeo community, and many teenage girls looked up to her as a role model. Young girls often asked Ashley for her autograph, and she always wrote personal letters to each one, encouraging them to pursue their dreams. In addition, she was actively involved in the Boulder County 4-H horse program, inspiring young children to participate in horseback riding. Ashley competed on various horse judging teams, participated in horse shows, and earned the title of Champion High Individual at the National 4-H Western Roundup. But Ashley had even bigger ambitions. She is a founding member and has served as vice president for 2 terms of the Thomas Valley FFA, the Future Farmers of America. FFA is an organization that supports individuals intending to enter and lead in the agricultural field. During her time there, she has been involved in many activities and plans to pursue FFA at the state level when she begins college. She graduated from Berthoud High in May 2016 and intended to attend Colorado State University, majoring in agricultural business. She looked forward to the next chapter of her life, unaware that it would be disrupted in a tragic way. Her life was devastated by one person, Tanner Flores, who believed that if he couldn't be with her, no one else should have her. Ashley met Tanner in high school, and their relationship seemed like a typical teenage romance to outsiders. However, they faced challenges. Tanner was controlling and dictated what she could and could not do. He even forbade her from attending college parties, which seemed absurd since Ashley was not the type to party. Was Tanner simply jealous of Ashley's accomplishments? Did he want to possess her completely? Was he insecure about losing her to someone better? Regardless of his motivations, Tanner frequently expressed his personal insecurities through his treatment of Ashley. After a year of dating, she realized he was not the right person for her and decided to break up with him. However, this decision was not easy for Tanner to accept. On June 4, 2016, he suggested they go hiking in Estes Park to discuss their relationship. Although Ashley tried to communicate that they were no longer together, Tanner mistakenly thought the conversation had gone well and believed they had reconciled. The next day, Ashley went out with friends to the Sundance Steakhouse, where Tanner unexpectedly showed up. Witnesses reported that he grabbed her, tried to turn her to face him, and attempted to talk, but she was done with his behavior and left. The next day, he convinced her to meet at Lon Hagler Reservoir to talk again. Despite her clearly stating that they were not back together, he somehow believed they had resumed their relationship. The day after that, Ashley returned to the Sundance Steakhouse and even reached out to Tanner, asking him not to come because she didn't want to see him. Tanner, however, made up a story saying he was locked out of his truck and needed her help. Ashley ignored his message. For days after their hike, on June 8, Ashley reluctantly agreed to accompany Tanner to sell some scrap metal, unaware that this decision would lead to a horrific incident in her life. On that day, Tanner checked Ashley's phone and found out that she had been texting two other guys, Tori and Jared. He suspected Ashley of flirting with them and accused her of being unfaithful, even though they were not officially in a relationship at the time. Later that night, he reached out to the two guys, which made Ashley very angry. He then sent her a text in which he expressed his hope that she realized what she had lost, stating that he had done everything for her and spent so much money. He warned her that he was going to do something reckless and then ended the message with a bye. Ashley tries to protect herself and still wants to maintain her friendship with Tanner, even though things have become tense. The next day, he messaged her again, asking if they could meet up and talk. She told him she was in Denver that morning but could meet later. While Ashley was in Denver, Tanner borrowed his dad's gun and went to shoot at Carter Lake, claiming it helped him relax. He continued to text Ashley throughout the day and even mentioned that he missed her. Frustrated, Ashley texted him to stop but still planned to meet him later because she didn't want to be rude. On the afternoon of June 9th, they met at Lon Hagler Reservoir, where Ashley got into Tanner's truck, unaware it would be the last thing she ever did. Around 7:30 p.m., her parents started looking for her since she hadn't come home. At 8 p.m., they found her car in a parking space at the reservoir. Both of her parents, Jeff and Ann, are confident that she will text them if she plans to come home late. Given this, they concluded that something wasn't right and immediately called the sheriff's office to report her missing. Local authorities quickly got involved and began their search. They contacted Ashley's friends and family for information. During this process, a name that came up repeatedly was Tanner. Authorities discovered that Tanner and Ashley had been in a relationship but had since broken up. They learned that Tanner was very upset about the breakup. One person mentioned that he posted a Snapchat message that raised concerns about his mental health, leading to fears that he might be thinking about ending his life. Many others interviewed by the authorities also noted that they had never seen Tanner this upset. Shortly thereafter, Tanner's father arrived and informed the officers that his .22 pistol was missing from the gun safe. He also stated that Tanner knew where the keys were located. Authorities issued a lookout alert for Tanner's truck and notified law enforcement across Colorado. The search was intensified, and by 8 a.m. the next day, they had located his position. Authorities received information that the truck had been seen at Tanner's grandfather's property in CB Bar, Colorado, which was about 5 hours away. Tanner's grandmother had called a neighbor to confirm the truck's presence, and upon verification, she reported it to the police. Due to the distance, organizing a team for an arrest would take some time, so authorities decided to send a wildlife ranger to the property to monitor Tanner and prevent his escape. Although Tanner did not attempt to flee, he engaged in disturbing behavior. The neighbor and the wildlife ranger witnessed him throwing blood-soaked rags into a nearby field and moving a roll-up mat behind the house. What happened next was horrifying. Tanner emerged from the house with a heavy blanket and placed it in the back seat of his truck. It was visibly heavy for him to carry, and a human arm was protruding from it. At this point, it was evident what Tanner had done. Fortunately, later that morning, he was arrested without incident by the sheriff's deputies, a CBI agent, and members of 3 other law enforcement agencies. When they opened the blanket in Tanner's truck, they discovered the body of Ashley. There was no way to save her, and her worst nightmare had come true. Tanner initially told the officers that he and Ashley were discussing their relationship in his truck when she lost control. He claimed that she had the gun, and while he was struggling to get it from her, it went off and accidentally killed her. He then stated that he shot her twice afterward to alleviate her suffering because the first shot did not kill her. After hearing this account, an officer expressed skepticism, and eventually, Tanner confessed the truth. Since Ashley had passed away by that time, Tanner was the only source for the details of the incident. He informed the officer that he and Ashley had met at Lon Hagler Reservoir, and then they drove west toward Carter Lake. This was the same lake Tanner had visited earlier that day to practice shooting. He mentioned that they talked about their relationship during their drive. Ashley expressed that she did not want to reconcile with him at that moment but saw the possibility of marrying him in the future. She needed time to explore other relationships. After this conversation, they began driving back to where Ashley's car was parked, but things took a dark turn. Tanner described how Ashley glared at him during the ride, which led him to reach into the back seat, grab the revolver, and attack her in the back of the head twice. He claimed that she did not die immediately, which is why he shot her a 3rd time, stating that it was meant to end her suffering. After that, he tried to clean her body as best as he could and drove to the land of his deceased grandfather in another part of the state. Once he provided his statement, he was taken to the Mesa County Jail without the option of bail. Ashley's funeral was held on June 17 at St. John Evangelist Catholic Parish in Loveland, Colorado. The ceremony was attended by over 700 people, including family, friends, and community members, all devastated by the tragic loss. The teenage girl, once a symbol of hope, happiness, and aspiration in the community, has now departed, leaving behind a profound sense of sorrow for everyone. Anne, Ashley's mother, expressed her wish for her daughter to be remembered for her vibrant life rather than for the way she passed away. She wanted Ashley's legacy to reflect the achievements of an energetic 18-year-old girl who had so much promise ahead of her. 18. Many people often feel confused about determining their life direction, such as their passions, careers, or college choices, because there are so many options. However, this was not the case for Ashley. In fact, she excelled in almost every field she participated in. That was her identity. While many young people struggle to figure out their paths at this age, Ashley had a clear vision for her future. Tragically, no one anticipated that her plans would be interrupted. People who attended her funeral described her as being fun, cheerful, and approachable. She was poised to become the rodeo queen the following year, but instead, she will be remembered during the upcoming season. Ashley had made significant contributions to her community, making her funeral a large and meaningful event. On that day, in addition to the ceremony, the FBI announced it would be joining Larimer County in the investigation to assist with evidence collection and search efforts. Tanner, who had previously been in Mesa County Jail, was moved to Larimer County Jail on the same day Ashley was laid to rest. The Ashley family was now beginning its pursuit of justice. On June 20th, Tanner appeared in court for the first time, facing charges of first-degree murder and second-degree kidnapping. The kidnapping charge stemmed from the allegation that Tanner would not allow Ashley to exit the truck when she attempted to do so. Following Ashley's funeral, her family would endure ongoing grief and suffering, yet they would have to wait a year and a half for legal proceedings to begin. In October 2017, the trial began, with both Tanner and Ashley's family and friends in attendance. It was evident to everyone that Tanner had killed Ashley. The central question was whether the act was premeditated. The prosecution argued that the murder was planned, claiming that Tanner had gone to the lake earlier that morning to test the revolver and find a secluded spot for the crime. The prosecution also noted that the revolver used in the murder was a single-action firearm, requiring manual resetting after each shot. Given that Ashley was shot 3 times, they argued this demonstrated deliberate intent rather than a spontaneous act. The defense, on the other hand, contended that it was not a planned murder and suggested that second-degree murder would be a more appropriate charge. During the trial, Tanner took the stand and described the incident in detail. He admitted to what he had done but denied any intention to kill Ashley. New information emerged during his testimony that had not been included in his initial statement after his arrest. He revealed that he had disposed of both their phones after the murder, but not before texting himself from Ashley's phone, claiming they were not together that afternoon and that she would not meet him. This seemed like a failed attempt to cover his tracks. One shocking revelation came when he disclosed that the night before his arrest, he had broken into his deceased grandfather's home. Once inside, he cleaned up some blood, turned on the TV, and watched cartoons before going to sleep. This bizarre behavior raised a question: how can someone claim to love another person so deeply yet have the capacity to murder them and then watch television afterwards? This remains an unfathomable mystery. At the conclusion of the trial, both families were left devastated by their loss, mourning their children and the futures they had envisioned. While the verdict brought some measure of justice for Ashley, it also marked a grim end for Tanner. The anguish felt by both families was unbearable. Though justice was served, no true winners emerged from this heartbreaking situation. Both families were irreparably damaged in the process. The case highlighted a significant issue: dating violence in the United States. Each year, approximately 1.5 million high school students experience physical violence from an intimate partner, and 1 in 3 teens aged 14 to 20 in the United States experiences dating violence. Alarmingly, 81% of parents do not consider teen dating violence to be a serious problem. And Jeff Doolittle found that there was insufficient discussion about this reality, which sadly affected their daughter, as well as many other young people in the United States and beyond who face similar situations. In response, they established the Ashley Doolittle Foundation. This nonprofit aims to honor their daughter's legacy by giving back to the community as she once did. The foundation focuses on raising awareness and preventing teen dating violence, helping victims connect with appropriate support groups, launching school programs, and educating students and parents about the signs of dating violence. Ashley's mother emphasized that the foundation was created to keep Ashley's memory alive. She stated that they wanted something good to come from this through the Ashley Doolittle Foundation and that they wanted to prevent other families from experiencing what they went through. The story of Ashley serves as a serious reminder of the dangers that can exist in teenage relationships. While not every relationship mirrors the tragic events involving Tanner and Ashley, some do. It is crucial to recognize that violence, whether physical, verbal, or psychological, is unacceptable. Ignoring these issues can lead to severe consequences, as Ashley tragically experienced. Tanner Flores, the perpetrator, was found guilty of murder and second-degree kidnapping on October 4, 2017. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 32 years.